Yeah, a lot of things don't make sense where you're trying to always find a politically correct answer to difficulties. Um, Take, for example, the current increase in number of African migrants or boat people trying to get into Europe. First, they come into some islands in the Mediterranean, and from there they jump into Spain or into Italy, and they don't know what to do with this issue. And my view is that long ago, they should have made the decision to sink a few of these boats. And yes, you're gonna kill some people, but you send a clear message that this is not a way to deal with the difficulties that Africa is facing, and that Spain and Italy are not about to commit suicide because they don't have the nerve to just sink a few boats. This would have been just a normal, easy practice in Roman times or any time just a
Hmm.
few decades ago.
Right.
So people in European nations are going to have to come to terms with some tough decisions like that. But I don't see any signs that they will at this point in time. In this respect, the ideology of human rights is like they have their backs against the wall and they make all sort of ridiculous arguments because you may be respecting the human rights of the boat people, but at the same time, in bringing many Africans into neighborhoods where they're not wanted and nobody voted for it, you're violating the rights of the people in those neighborhoods, in schools where the curriculum has to be changed, and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
And just to pick up on that quickly there, remember where you were. I want to hear the rest of that. But even the idea that if Europe sends this message that, oh, it's okay, come on over, you could even argue that, okay, these boats actually do sink on their own. There's been a lot of accidents of this. And this is now then encouraging that continued behavior and actually in the extension risking more lives than actually is necessary. It might sound weird and is a contradiction in itself, but I think that if there is no clear message and line along this type of thinking, I think that there is a, I mean, the level of the self-sacrifice where this idea that, Europe belongs to everybody and we're completely even going to sacrifice our own well-being, is a long-term dangerous strategy. It's something that also prevents, for example, a lot of people that are well educated, let's say, in other parts of the world that don't want to live in the conditions where they currently are at. They choose to uproot. They choose to go to Europe or America or Canada or Australia or whatever you have, and in
Yeah,
that process they are the country that they fled from are losing the quality of those people that they would need to improve the conditions where they are at. So it's actually, in the long term, again, might sound weird, but in the long term it's actually a way of continuing to keeping the third world country or second world country in a kind of a disparity, and actually preventing them from actually making the decisions locally and saying we need to change things here. We can't just drag our problems with us, right?
but in the end, this is more than an argument because, as I was saying before, um, it may well be that people today, in terms of their own character and psychological makeup, just don't have it to make these kinds of arguments. When I say to people, I've said this before, that those African boats they should be just sunk, a few of them, they just really say, "Oh my God, you really are like a cruel and this and that." And they just sitting there in their comfortable homes without having to make any decisions. And so, I try to tell them that these are decisions that I'm not making for myself. I could just adorn myself with morally righteous views that in the long run are going to be harmful for everyone. Uh, but their character is such that they cannot make these kinds of, not even decisions, they cannot even have these thoughts in their heads. So nobody says them. And I don't know how is that going to be overcome. So I do think there is a deep-seated element here that is beyond arguments, despite the fact that I try to argue in my blog and elsewhere. It is beyond argument and may have to do with the current psychological makeup of the population and their inability to conceive of violence, of hardship, and just asserting themselves in a strong way against others.
Well, again, making those tough decisions and facing them in the now is something that I believe our ancestors were accustomed to making. Those it's a kind of a tough love, really, when you look at it, and it's the same treatment in nature. It might not be easy to see, something, eaten or attacked in nature, whatnot, but the fact is that if we would run around and save every animal that we see from being eaten we would be inundated with an imbalance in nature. And the fact is, we think that we're removed from this, and I think that it is an exhibit of a kind of a mental weakness. And my point is, it might feel good in the short term, but this is something that ultimately is going to catch up with us, and it's something that's going to hurt a heck of a lot more in the long term, in the bigger picture, when we're going to be faced with issues and problems that are so difficult and so monumental, instead of taking those small step difficult decisions right now. So I'm thinking long term, and I see that all of this that's happening right now is not only to the detriment of Europeans or Westerners. It's for everybody globally, actually, that we have to assert some kind of body of rule, and there has to be some tough love in this situation to ask everyone to step up to the plate, to ask everyone to try to achieve harder as opposed to flee from the area where you are because it's uncomfortable at the moment. I don't know.